Hi, I'm Roger by Katie Newstatter. I'm a 6-year-old boy. I have a mom and a dad and many siblings. School is difficult for me, especially in reading. I do not verbally communicate my needs. Schoolwork takes painfully long, and I would prefer to watch television shows all day long. Kindergarten was my first school setting. I did not attend any preschool, so entering a classroom was a culture shock for me. I displayed signs that I was struggling in so many areas, so further measures were put into place, but I don't think my family agreed to what my teachers wanted from me. So now I'm in first grade, and I'm still showing many weaknesses. I have many obstacles that I face. My object avoidance is frequent and my attention span is slim. I resort to unusual first grade behavior, which hinders my ability to succeed. I am consistent in my behavior. I'm uninterested, I lack motivation, I'm nonverbal, and show attention deficits. When given an assignment, I'm usually the last one to start, which makes me the last one to finish. If uncertain on a task, I rarely raise my hand for support. Instead, I color or play with something on my desk. I'm extremely needy and require step-by-step instruction. If I request to use the bathroom, I jump up and down as if I'm in pain. Therefore, I don't verbally express any of my needs. This immaturity displayed makes me stand out the most. Socially, I don't seem to associate with anyone, and I keep to myself. When working in pairs, I will talk very quietly to my partner. Whether in the classroom or in one of my special classes, like gym or art, I am a hermit and enjoy my own company. I don't usually express any emotions. My face is very stoic and serious. With any test my teacher administers, I usually display odd behavior. I gag, I clear my throat, or repeat words almost like an echo. Here are some more of my observations. During carpet time, I can be seen shaking my head back and forth, playing with something I found on the floor, or sitting away from others as if I'm hiding. I never participate in my classroom discussions and do not follow along with the rest of the class. During small group reading, I'm usually looking elsewhere than in my book. I clear my throat while reading, I cannot sit still, and I play with my fingers. All of these signs indicate a few things. I'm anxious, I lack confidence, and on a frustration level while reading. When reading, I do not display any of the following. I sound out words, I look for word families, or search for any picture clues. I don't do any of that. I prefer to give up. When I am pulled out for BSI help, I am in my own world. I often do not follow along with the rest of the group, and I receive the most redirection out of my peers. When writing, I'm repetitive in my words and do not know how to take my thoughts and write them onto paper. I use resources around the room to come up with ideas. Even though this is a great strategy, my sentences don't make sense. When conferencing with my teacher, I am unable to repeat what I wrote. When writing in my BSI room, I sit in my seat for a few minutes trying to come up with a sentence to write. After a few minutes, I am prompted with options on how to start. Even with the help, I struggle and cannot devise a first grade sentence. My school history. Kindergarten was my first school setting. My past kindergarten teacher said I struggled to acquire certain tasks. She also contacted my parents and they felt I could catch up. Coincidentally, I was in a classroom with 2 teachers because a peer needed special services. However, the teacher worked with me as well. I was so lucky. I was referred to the IRS team, which is Intervention and Response Services team, in kindergarten because I was not behaving or comprehending like an average kindergartner. Based on the referral, the team offered retention to my family, but they were not interested. As a result, I'm severely struggling in first grade and have been referred to the IRS team again. I get pulled out daily for math and language arts. I am in a general education classroom with 1 teacher and 15 of my friends. In first grade, I take the developmental reading assessment, which is the DRA, to assess my comprehension and fluency. An average first grader should enter with a DRA 4 and exit with a DRA 16. I entered with a DRA 3 and have not made any improvement. The elementary reading attitude story with the Garfield pictures proved I dislike reading. I scored a total of 12 on recreational reading and a total of 10 on academic reading. Overall, my total raw score averaged 22. This low score mirrors my attitude towards reading both at home and at school, slim to none. My family. My family is a mystery. Sometimes I'm not sure what they are thinking. My mom and dad are aware of my struggles but seem to be in denial. I'm the youngest, so I get away with a lot. I have an older brother in 6th grade. Since I'm their baby, my family protects me and makes many excuses on my behalf. I rarely complete my homework, and if I do, it is in my mother's handwriting. I'm not allowed to take any reading book home because my mom thinks it's too much for me. The schoolwork is too difficult, so my parents feel I need to be in a classroom with 2 teachers like I had in kindergarten. human. On the first day of school, my teacher sent home an information sheet for every parent to fill out. Within this document, there was a question referring to what the biggest goal for your child is in first grade. The response my family provided was different. They mentioned how they would like me to become a stronger reader and to also learn to tie my shoes. I'm not sure why they needed to include tying my shoes. It was a bit concerning to my teacher. Assessments. The following assessments were used to determine my weaknesses: a miscue analysis, the Woodcock, informal reading inventory, the core reading maze comprehension test, the core phonics survey, the fluency scale, the core vocabulary screening, and PALS. The first one was miscue analysis. I read a kindergarten level reading book for my running record. This book was very repetitive, had familiar sight words, and words with short vowels. A book that was 8 pages long took me over 6 minutes to complete. I had many errors which indicated this book was too difficult. The last few pages of the book, I became fidgety and started playing with something I found on my desk. My object avoidance and attention deficit severely affects my learning. Looking deeper into the running record, I am currently reading books on my frustration level. I had 11 errors out of a total of 65 words. I'm not reading for meaning. Instead, I'm focused on decoding the words. However, I do not use any reading strategies to identify these words. For instance, I hardly search for context clues or picture clues to help me. I would rather shrug my shoulders or shake my head, meaning I don't know, so tell me the word. My mistakes were mainly visual. For example, the actual word was pet, but I said pot. Or the word was Tim, and I said tab. The numerous substituted words did not fit within the sentences, so they were confusing and did not make any sense. My background knowledge is limited. I rarely read at home, and my parents do not force it. As a result, I have no confidence in my ability to read fluently. For comprehension, informal reading inventory was used. Based off the word list from the IRI assessment, I was instructed to read a narrative passage from Pre-Primer 1. I was first asked concept questions to activate my prior knowledge. My responses were not in depth and they didn't give a complete thought-out definition. For example, one question mentioned, what does it mean to hop? My response, like you're playing. I associated playing with hopping, but I didn't justify the term. As a result, I scored a 50% on this section. My prediction of the story included a list format such as running, jumping, and crawling. I was unable to communicate using a complete sentence. These results showed my lack of knowledge on these concepts, which foreshadowed my ability to comprehend the reading passage. I fluently read the passage. I had one miscue in a 57-second time frame. Once again, this placed me in the independent range. I was able to read 37.9 words correctly per minute. My face lit up after I finished reading the passage because I knew I read all the words accurately. I was able to retell some of the sequence of events, but again, I listed. Not one idea was a direct quote from the passage. My comprehension of the story was alarming because I was unable to answer most of the questions after the story. I answered using one-word responses and only understood 2 questions. The core reading maze comprehension test was way too difficult for me. This assessment started at the 2nd grade level, but I'm only in 1st, so my teacher read the whole test to me. Not only was I unable to read any of this assessment, but also I was required to listen and fill in the missing blanks. This was a tough task for me as my oral comprehension is not my strong suit. I was unable to retain any of the information my teacher presented to me. I would often look away as if I was trying to say I would prefer not to answer. My teacher repeated sentences to coerce an answer out of me. I had a total of 16 errors and got 5 correct from guessing. Some of my responses were not even the choices that were mentioned. I think I just came up with random answers that were not even located on the paper. This further indicated I was unable to understand what was being read to me and my attention was just not there. The Woodcock. In the passage comprehension section, I'm still considered below grade level. My GE was a 1.0, so I'm a few months behind in grade equivalency. My AE was 6.6, which also shows my gap between my peers. As the reading gets farther, the passages get more difficult. Therefore, I started to stare and become fidgety in my seat. I started off strong with great fluency and using appropriate reading clues, but then it dwindled off as the passages didn't have pictures anymore. I even said I can't do this one because there aren't any pictures. I reached my ceiling at number 19, which was kind of early on the test. It was clear that I did not understand what information I was reading anymore, so I could not fill in the blanks. My reading started to not even make any sense, so a word to fit in the blank was completely offbeat. I received a 28 PR, which showed that I would do as well or better than 28 out of 100 children my age in the section. I struggle in comprehension because I do not read for meaning. I only focus on decoding the words. For phonemic awareness in phonics, I took the core phonics survey. This assessment revealed that I was all over the board on my phonics ability. On the alphabet, skills, and letter sounds, I was considered to be on a strategic level. I was able to identify all uppercase letter names and most lowercase letter names. I struggled with B and Q because I thought B was a D and Q was a P. I scored 18 out of 21 on consonant sounds, being able to identify almost all sounds. However, I could not identify the other way to say G or C. I struggled with both long and short vowels. This was prevalent in the reading and decoding section. In the subset with short vowels and CVC words, I scored the highest. Yes. The other subtests were too difficult for me. For instance, the low frequency vowel and consonant spelling subtest was the lowest. I was incapable of identifying these words. The section entitled multisyllabic words was also too advanced. I scanned the page and said, I don't know any of these words. Therefore, I gave up and I was done. Word recognition and fluency. I took the fluency scale. I was able to read a kindergarten book, but with little fluency ability. I scored mostly 2s on the scale, indicating I have very little fluency. I scored 2s in the following areas: rate, phrasing, intonation, pausing, and integration. I scored even lower, a 1 on stress, as I do not stress any words to reflect the meaning of the text. I also took the woodcock. The woodcock, the word identification section confirmed that I was identifying words on a grade equivalent to 1.6 and an AE is 7.2. The words I needed to identify appeared to be both kindergarten and first grade sight words, which should be familiar to me. However, my reading ability is low, which prevents me from identifying more words within the section selection. I struggle with ending sounds as well as short vowels and long vowels. I could not pronounce bed and instead said bad. The word come was came. I said fish instead of fast. My lack of knowing ending sounds included the word find, but said fin. I was unable to pronounce words that were not in my sight word vocabulary, such as after, milk, and watch. My lack of exposure to books reflects my inability to understand and recognize certain words. I also did the IRI, and I started on the pre-primer 1 level, 2 grades below, and read 15 out of 17 words automatically. I was able to self-correct one word, it, and could not identify the word of. Some of the words I knew were can, with, he, go, to, was, do, on. My overall score was a 94%, placing me at the independent level. I moved on to the pre-primer 2-3 word list, and I really struggled. I automatically knew 6 words: make, people, look, they, to, under, and help. Out of 20, and correctly identified 5 words: like, doing, work, play, and some. My total score was a 55%, placing me at the frustration level. I also was assessed on my vocabulary, and I did the core vocabulary screening. I am on a strategic level. This meant that I am having difficulty understanding grade level material because of insufficient vocabulary knowledge. I was unable to read in the vocabulary words, so they were all read to me. I attempted to answer every vocabulary word and scored 22 of them correct. For example, I knew trail meant path and merry meant happy. Many of the words were repeated as I became unfocused and looked confused. I scored 8 incorrectly, and these were vocabulary words I should have been familiar with. For instance, below I thought was gone, and unhappy I thought was another, or difficult I thought was tall. These words would have been in my background knowledge if I read more or was read to more frequently. An additional assessment I took was the PALS. This phonological awareness and literacy screening measured my skills that are predictive of my future reading success, and measured name writing ability, uppercase and lowercase of alphabet recognition, letter sound and beginning sound production, print and word awareness, rhyme awareness, and nursery rhyme awareness. The assessment indicated my strengths and those areas that required more direct attention. I met the developmental benchmark in a few areas. For example, I performed well in name writing, uppercase and lowercase recognition, and letter sounds. This is exciting because it revealed I could eventually have potential to start decoding and blending phonemes. I scored in the developmental range for beginning sound awareness, print and word awareness, as well as rhyme awareness. These skills are the stepping stones to becoming a better reader. I was below developmental level in regards to nursery rhyme awareness. This was noteworthy as my rhyming awareness was not good, but not in the context of nursery rhymes. So I was able to rhyme, but I couldn't really identify any of the nursery rhymes. I was not familiar with the nursery rhymes, so I was unable to complete the sentences.